The recording to start. Okay. So in the last class, we had discussed the general theory of the demographic transition, which is a characteristic, a process which has been occurring in all countries. So today we are going to turn to India, and we are going to see how the demographic structure of the country has changed over the past 100 years. Now, some general facts. The last census was held in 2011, and it was estimated that India's population was 1.21 billion. This is the combined population of US, Indonesia, Brazil, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Japan. So, India is clearly the one of the leaders so far as world population is concerned. And can you tell me who is the most populous country?
So China.
China.
China has 19.4% of the world's population. But I mean, India's size, I think, is slightly smaller than China. India covers about 17% of the world, 2.4% of the world's surface area, but it has 17% of the world's population. You can see that the population, this is just a raw population. Okay, so obviously the Northeast will be the laggards. They will have a very low population. You can see Jammu Kashmir, the Northeast, still has a low population. UP was a problem area right from the start in 2001. Now Bihar and Maharashtra has also become numerically the largest states. But I would say that this figure is not very revealing, because over time population, given the stage that India is, population is bound to increase. More important is the annual exponential growth rate in population. This blue line is the world average. This is India. You can see it's 1.5 per population. Bangladesh, Nigeria, Pakistan, they are higher than India. But Brazil, Indonesia, China in particular, China has an annual growth rate of only 0.5. In fact, as you know, China had very successfully implemented the one-child policy. Now they are trying to increase the number of children. They are facing labor shortages, and so they are trying to increase the number of children through different types of incentives. Japan, the growth rate is nothing, almost zero. Russia, negative. So this implies, I mean, if you focus on India and China, given China is of course ahead of India currently in terms of population size, but given India's faster growth rate, India is expected to overtake China in a couple of years. So then we can boast that we are the leaders in the world. In this graph, we have presented two lines. This blue line is population. So initially, you can say up till the around about 1930s, growth rate was not increasing very fast. So it was increasing, but at a very slow growth. The population growth was very slow. Remember, we are talking about just the growth in numbers, absolute numbers. So why do you think that the population growth was very low? Is it expected? Does it fit in with the theory of demographic transition?
স্যার মানে পপুলেশন গ্রোথ রেট দেখছি, তো আমাদের এই সময়টা মানে ওই বিগিনিং পিরিয়ডে বার্থ রেটটা হাই ছিল, বা তার সাথে মর্টালিটি রেটটাও বোধহয় হাই ছিল। তো তাই জন্য মানে পপুলেশন গ্রোথটা লো ছিল।
The two balances or
হ্যাঁ,
cancels out each other.
ক্যান্সেল।
তাহলে up till 1930s was the first phase in demographic transition. তারপর থেকে এইখান থেকে তোমার সেকেন্ড ফেজটা স্টার্ট হয়েছে। We know that India is just in the process of finishing the second stage of transition. আচ্ছা, এইখানে আমরা দেখছি if you look at the growth রেটটা এইখানে ফিগার্স গুলো দেখো, it is 0.5 which is pretty low, but it falls sharply around this part. এটা কেন বলতে পারবে?
স্যার ওই রকম সময় তো একটা স্প্যানিশ ফ্লু মানে কোনো এপিডেমিক হয়েছিল, তো তার জন্য কি এটা হতে পারে?
Yes. In 1918, there was the influenza epidemic, which led to a very sharp fall in population. তো এই স্প্যানিশ ফ্লু নিয়ে যেটা হয়েছে, পপুলেশন কমেছিল তো, সো হোয়াট উড ইউ এক্সপেক্ট দ্য ইম্প্যাক্ট টু বি অন আউটপুট? Will the output decrease?
স্যার লেবার্স যদি ফল করে যায় তাহলে প্রোডাকশনও ফল করতে পারে, না আউটপুট ফল করবে?
দেখো, একটা if there's a disease which affects only workers, it's a bit unrealistic, right? So one can expect that all people are dying. People of all ages are dying. So that means the supply of workers is also going to fall. So one would expect population to decrease also, right? But can you think of a situation when the growth rate, when the output will not fall?
Sir, if the production is automated, then it won't be affected.
Not in the 1920s at that time. No, there's a very simple reason. Labor market based explanation.
স্যার লেবার মার্কেট বেস মানে স্যার এটা কি ইজ ইট সামথিং টু ডু উইথ দ্য ফ্যাক্ট দ্যাট মানে দের ইজ অলওয়েজ ওই আনইউটিলাইজ লেবার ইন দ্য মার্কেট, মানে আনএমপ্লয়মেন্ট পারসিস্টেন্ট?
Yeah, you have come close to it. But if you look at the unemployment rates, it was not very high at that time. So virtually most of the workers, the persons who are willing to work, have got some sort of a occupation. They are engaged in productive activities. But in which sector are they employed? In the 1920s?
Agriculture.
Agriculture, right? It's an agriculture, rural-based economy. So most of them are engaged in agriculture. Have you heard of surplus labor? What is surplus labor? ধরো তোমরা প্রোডাকশনে when you're increasing labor force, what is happening to marginal productivity of labor? Obviously
ফলিং।
falling. So a time will come when it becomes zero,
ইয়েস।
right? আচ্ছা, এইখানে তুমি যদি না বাড়িয়ে আউটপুটটাকে, লেবারটা কমাও, what will happen to output?
Should rise.
It should rise. Or if you think of a flat region, Uh,
স্যার আরেকবার বলুন কি বললেন, প্রশ্নটা কি করলেন?
হ্যাঁ, এক মিনিট দাঁড়া, আমাকে একটু এটা বলে নিতে দাও। Yeah, I was saying that why the basic question was that এখানে তো একটা আউটপুট লেবার ডিক্লাইন করেছে, what is the possible impact on output? আচ্ছা, ধরো তোমার টোটাল প্রোডাক্ট এরকম করে বেড়ে এরকম হয়ে গেল, ঠিক আছে? সো দিস ইজ দ্য টোটাল প্রোডাক্ট। আর মার্জিনাল প্রোডাক্টে কি হবে? ইজ গোয়িং টু ফল, টোটাল প্রোডাক্ট কনস্ট্যান্ট হয়ে গেল, নাও ইটস গোয়িং টু বি লাইক দিস। ঠিক আছে? So this is the total product. Let us say this is the marginal product. আচ্ছা, so suppose you are reducing labor. This is the labor. You are reducing labor. What is happening to output?
Sir, if we are employing a level of labor such that MPL is already zero,
এরকম
if we
জায়গা
reduce,
থেকে, এরকম জায়গা থেকে আমি রিডিউস করছি।
okay, so in that case, there'll be no change in output because MPL remains zero. When we move to the transition point, MPL starts changing.
Yeah.
In fact, it starts increasing.
So this is called
সারপ্লাস লেবার।
surplus labor or disguised unemployment.
Sir, so these laborers are not contributing to marginal product. But I mean to output,
To production.
right?
Yeah. So during the 1980s, during the flu epidemic, if you're moving like this, if suppose the curve is really like this, what would be the impact on production?
স্যার কোনো চেঞ্জ হবে না, টিল দ্য পয়েন্ট, ওই টিল দ্য
হ্যাঁ, ঠিক
পয়েন্ট।
আছে, ঠিক আছে, এত অব্দি। কিন্তু বাট সাপোজ, সরি, if it is over here,
Sir, output increases in
তাহলে
that case.
আউটপুট ডিক্রিজ করবে।
output is going to decrease. I'll bring it here, it becomes easier to understand. এরকম একটা জিনিস। So the influenza epidemic provided was a natural experiment. দেখো, তুমি তো বলতে পারো না ওয়ার্কারদের গিয়ে যে দেখো বাপু, আমি একটা টেস্ট করতে চাই সারপ্লাস লেবার আছে কিনা, সো আই এম গোয়িং টু আস্ক ইউর এমপ্লয়ার টু থ্রো ইউ আউট, টু স্টপ হায়ারিং ইউ। এই ধরনের এক্সপেরিমেন্ট করা যায় না। বাট নাও ইউ হ্যাভ আ ভেরি ন্যাচারাল এক্সপেরিমেন্ট that you are having a reduction in the labor force naturally. So this gave the opportunity for economists to test whether there was surplus labor in agriculture or not. So you have heard of Theodore Schultz. So T.W. Schultz wrote a paper on surplus labor, and I think he showed that output was increasing. And therefore, there was no surplus labor in India.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, when the amount of labor employed in India in the
Yeah.
1920s, when it falls below that transition point due to the flu epidemic, sir, could you
তাহলে
explain
output বাড়বে।
তাহলে মানে
হ্যাঁ।
what happened?
আচ্ছা,
Yeah.
না, আমি বলছি ধরো এইখান থেকে স্টার্ট করলো, এরকম একটা পয়েন্ট। সাপোজ আই ওয়াজ অ্যাট আ পয়েন্ট লাইক দিস, so suppose this is the starting point, right? So that means we have surplus labor, output will not fall. But suppose this is the starting period. Okay. So as I'm reducing labor supply, I'm going down the total product curve. এইভাবে বাড়ছে, output is falling.
Okay, sir, understood.
Okay. So Schulz argued that what we can do is we have a reduction in labor. We just have to see whether output declined also. Output যদি fall করে, that means there was no surplus labor. I'm falling from here to here. But if output remains same, that means I was at a position like this. And I've merely come up till here. Yes. So then, Amartya Sen wrote a rejoinder, very nice paper in which he showed that the existence of surplus labor does not imply that marginal product is zero. It may be a sufficient condition, but it is not a necessary condition. The necessary condition for surplus labor is MPL is constant. Okay, so let's just take this. Let me draw another curve.
Sir,
Huh.
sir, so in terms of the total product curve with Sen's rejoinder, what will happen is that at that transition point, the line becomes linear, right?
Yes. The line will become linear. So what would happen to output? So if you're
Output-
coming down like this, if you're moving from here,
সেম
না এখানে টোটাল প্রোডাক্টটা এটাকে আমি অরেঞ্জ করে দিই, আদারওয়াইজ একটা কনফিউশন হয়ে যাবে। হ্যাঁ, তাহলে এখানে if I have a curve like this, the yellow curve, this will be the corresponding total product curve. মানে এখানে একটু আপার রাইজিং হবে, এইখানে গিয়ে তোমার লিনিয়ারলি ইনক্রিজ করতে থাকবে। দ্য রেট অফ ইনক্রিজ ইজ কনস্ট্যান্ট। এরকম একটা কার্ভ হবে। সরি সরি, আমি একদম ভুল লিখে দিই, না এটা তো টোটাল প্রোডাক্ট, হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে। So from the point where you have surplus labor, the total product curve becomes linear. Now, if you look at output, if you reduce labor, will output fall? Sorry, will output remain same? I'm in a position of surplus labor, but will output remain same? Output is going to fall, right? So TP is linear even if surplus labor exists. A reduction in output will lead to a fall in output. Okay. So Schulz and Sen had this famous debate. Schulz argued that the decline in output implied that there was no surplus labor in India, but Sen first mathematically proved that marginal product equal to zero was only a sufficient condition for surplus labor. The necessary condition was that marginal product of labor is constant. In that case, total product will be linear, so that even if surplus labor exists, a reduction in the workforce, as in the flu epidemic, will result in the flu epidemic will result to a fall in output. So the fact that output has decreased doesn't imply that there's no surplus labor. Schulz's method was wrong. So Schulz tried to respond. There was the famous Schulz-Sen debate. And if you're interested, there was a book by Charan Wadhwa, edited, Readings in Indian Economy, where he has printed the three papers by Schulz, Sen, and Schulz's rejoinder. You can also get the papers on net. Okay. So anyway, so you had because of the influenza epidemic, you had a decline at this point. But after that, the growth rate started increasing. Right. Again, 40s, this is possibly because of partition, the partition effect. Again a rise, but look what is happening from the mid-70s. This is the emergency, so population control became very important. So initially you can see that there's a plateauing off of the growth rate. And now from the 1990s onward, you see that the population growth rate, exponential growth rate, is declining markedly. There's a very clear decline in the exponential growth rate from around this point. So is this clear to all of you? Okay. So however, we can see that even though the growth rate has fallen, population is still rising. So we are still in the second phase. Growth rates of population, very clear trend. We can see that initially the so-called cow belt, except Madhya Pradesh, this had a very high population growth rate. But in UP, in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, the growth rate, not in Madhya Pradesh perhaps, even in Madhya Pradesh, 24 to 20. But Bihar, it has remained same. It has decreased by 3. UP, it has fallen. Rajasthan also, it has fallen. So Jammu Kashmir, it has fallen, but Jammu Kashmir's figures are very doubtful because it's difficult to implement a complete census in Kashmir. So you can see that by and large, there has been a decrease in the growth rates. Look, Chhattisgarh, Orissa, West Bengal, they have now fallen in the, not Chhattisgarh, but Orissa and West Bengal has fallen in the green zone. Tamil Nadu, on the other hand, has experienced a slight increase in the population growth rate. Okay. Coming to the birth and death rate, again, you can see both the birth and death rate were very high. During the flu epidemic, the birth rate shot up sharply. Thereafter, it has been decreasing substantially. I mean, this is because perhaps the flu epidemic forced the policymakers to look into the health infrastructure. So death rate came down sharply in the 1920 to 30s, and then it has been falling steadily. So this is the influenza epidemic. If you look at the birth rate, again from here, I mean, it is falling, it has more or less plateaued off, but from the 70s, the birth rate has been falling significantly. There's a clear trend. Okay, so population growth is falling. So it matches with the earlier figure that we get. Look, this is between 60 and 80. If you go back, look at the growth rate between the 60s and 80s. So it is this point, which is corresponding to this. Now, if you look at the gap between the birth and death rate, what I've done is I've taken lines with the same height. So look at the height. This is the gap between birth and death rate. I've just copy pasted a line over here. So if you compare this, the gap over here and the gap in the 1920s, where is the gap higher? Look at this. I've given 4 points. Can you tell me what has been happening to the gap between CBR and CDR?
Gap has increased.
The gap has increased up to this point.
Then it is fallen.
তারপরে কিন্তু ফল করছে। এইখানে গ্যাপটা দেখো আর এইখানে আনকভার্ড পার্টটা দেখো। এখানে দেখো বার্থ রেট has been falling sharply while death rate is continuously falling. So that means we are coming to the end of the second phase. We are now ready to enter into the third phase. Okay. Achha. Now, tell me, the next figure that we're going to look at is life expectancy at birth. So life expectancy at birth has gone up from pretty low levels. It's now the mid-60s. Now, who do you think has a higher life expectancy? Male or female?
I think males.
Okay, Arathrik thinks male. Anyone else? Lokhodip?
হ্যাঁ স্যার আমি মেলই ভাবছি।
আচ্ছা, কেন? জাস্ট তুমি বলো, মানে জাস্ট কমন সেন্স দিয়ে বলো এগুলো। ইউ আর নট এক্সপেক্টেড
Sir.
টু নো দিস, ইউ আর নট আ ডেমোগ্রাফার।
Sir, I think I
বলো
read
রাজদীপ।
somewhere
হ্যাঁ।
females.
সুকন্যা বলো।
Sir, আমার মনে হচ্ছে আমি কোথাও পড়েছিলাম it's women.
হ্যাঁ, মানে
Life expectancy.
তুমিও মেল বলছো তো?
না, women বলছি, females.
আচ্ছা, উইমেন বলছো। রাজদীপ তুমি কি বলছিলে?
স্যার আমি মেলস বলছিলাম বিকজ মেজরিটি কেসেসে মানে মোস্ট কেসেসে মানে ওই মানে 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 ডেঞ্জারাস টু লাইফ ওয়ার্কে বেশিরভাগ সময় মেনরাই বেশি ইমপ্লয়েড থাকে। মানে মেজরিটি অফ দ্য
রিস্কি
কেসে।
অকুপেশন, তাহলে তো
Risky
লাইফ এক্সপেক্টেন্সি কম হবে।
হ্যাঁ, মানে আপনার প্রশ্নটা কি ছিল? লাইফ এক্সপেক্টেন্সি কম তো?
কার কম,
হ্যাঁ,
কার
সেটাই বলছি,
বেশি?
মেলসদের কম।
আচ্ছা আরাত্রিক, তুমি কি বলেছিলে, মেলসদের কম না বেশি?
মেলসদের বেশি।
বেশি। লক্ষ্যদীপ, তুমিও তো তাই বলেছিলে, মেলদের
হ্যাঁ স্যার,
বেশি।
মেলসদের বেশি, হ্যাঁ বেশি
হ্যাঁ,
বলেছেন।
এটা কেন হতে পারে? মানে একটা ফ্যামিলিতে হেলথ এক্সপেন্ডিচার কার উপর বেশি হয়? সাপোজ আ মেল মেম্বার ফলস ইল, a female member falls ill, who is more likely to get treatment?
স্যার মেল মেম্বার।
স্যার দুজনেই স্যার।
Nah, studies have
So
shown
what
that.
I feel, so what I feel is males are more likely to get the treatment because there's this stigma persisting that since they are it might be so that they are the breadwinners of the family, so they will get a priority over women. Like something like that can happen.
Exactly, but it's not a stigma that male the male members get other bread earners. You can see that it's a people believe that males are getting income, and while the females are not doing any important work. So a rational strategy which seeks to maximize family income should focus on the nutrition, the education, the nutrition and health of the male workers. মানে ওরা যদি অসুস্থ হয়ে পড়ে তখন ফ্যামিলি ইনকামও কিন্তু ফল করে যাবে। আচ্ছা, but what are we getting? So the blue line is the males. You can see initially males have a lower life expectancy, but from 1920 up till 2000, male life expectancy is greater, as you have predicted. In the last 20 years, the females have gone ahead. They have a higher life expectancy. Now, if you look at the global trends, particularly in developed countries, you will see that female life expectancy is higher than that of male life expectancy. So India is only now, what you had said was firstly wrong in general terms, but in case of India, what you had said, that male workers will have a higher life expectancy, is true for the most part of the study. Only in the last 20 years, we are now corresponding to what demographic theory, or rather what empirical evidence shows for developed countries. But the gap that we observe, female life expectancy minus male life expectancy, this is still lower than that what we observe in developed countries. Okay, you can see now. Although the gap is in favor of females, this gap is less than what we see in most countries.
Sir,
Yes.
I had a question. Sir,
Yeah.
what would be the most preferable circumstance? The gap being significantly high or low?
Ideally, it would be equal.
Yeah.
No,
so-
not equal, sorry. It should be slightly, it should be in favor of females because of genetic reasons. যেটা দেখা যায় যে at the time of birth, the probability of a girl dying is higher than that of a boy genetically. Then what happens is you have the social factors coming in. What we are going to discuss next, the sex ratio. So ideally, female life expectancy should be above that of males. Next we come to mortality rates.
স্যার আপনি কি বললেন আইডিয়াল সিচুয়েশনটা কি বললেন?
আইডিয়াল হচ্ছে, দেখো, জেনেটিক রিজনসে মেয়েদের সার্ভাইভাল প্রবাবিলিটি কিন্তু হায়ার ইফ ইউ রিমুভ সোশ্যাল ডিসক্রিমিনেশন। ঠিক আছে? সো ইফ ইউ ট্রিট বোথ আ মেল চাইল্ড অ্যান্ড আ ফিমেল চাইল্ড in a same manner, the girl child is likely to survive more. সেই কারণে female life expectancy is supposed to be higher than that of male life expectancy. So you should have ideally you should have a gap like this. This is the normal situation. But the gap should be actually higher. ঠিক আছে? Anyway, that will be part of your assignment, so you'll be able to see it. Acha, infant mortality rate. Acha, now here we look at three things. One is, sorry, I've forgotten the definition of neonatal. Let's look it up. Neonatal is, I think, within 1 month. Yeah, within 28 days. Okay, so neonatal is deaths within the first 28 days. Post neonatal is between 29 days and 1 year. Child mortality CMR and infant mortality rate is 1 year within 360 days. CMR is 5 years. Is it clear? So we have
Okay, sir.
4 mortality rates. One is within 28 to 1 year. আচ্ছা, পুরো 1 ইয়ারের মধ্যে ওটাকেও একটা মর্টালিটি বলি, 1 year to 5 year. আচ্ছা, so you can see that the neonatal mortality has gone down. By and large, it has fallen, but it has plateaued. It is plateauing now over here. এখানেও দেখো, in all the 3 cases, you are having a decrease in the mortality rates of children. But from the 1990s, we know that growth has picked up, but a corresponding decrease in mortality, the mortality decline seems to have slowed down, which is a very, very concerning sign. Because the Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, they focus a lot on these mortality rates. And this has remained one of the concerning areas. Mortality under age 5, you can see the green line, not very clear, but the green line, it is higher than South Asia. The red is Asia, blue line is Southern Asia. So it's higher than Southern Asia, but now it's projected to be equal from 2050 onwards. So the catching up process is going to take 3 more centuries. But even then, it is going to be much above that of, even in 2015, even in the next century, is going to be above the Asian rate. So the progress in terms of infant mortality, child mortality is very bad. fertility, this is again the crude birth rate. This is the total, this is the total fertility rate, red. And this is the total marital fertility rate. You can see that there's a decline in all of them. If you compare between countries, yeah, here the picture is not that bad. Initially, before 2000, it was much higher than blue is India. So India had a fertility rate which is above that of Asia, but it is below that of Southern Asia. So it is intermediate fertility. But you can see that South Asian countries have successfully managed to reduce their fertility rate. Okay, so it's converging. It has already converged, and it is going to converge with the Asian country, other Asian average also. So the picture in terms of fertility is quite promising. You're going to have decline and convergence. Next, we look at age-specific fertility. So we are looking at different age groups, and what is the fertility of each age group. So blue is 71, this is 91, and this is the last census. You can see that overall there has been a decrease. Age-specific fertility rates have decreased. But for which age group is it still high? Over here. The decrease, এখানে ডিক্রিজটা দেখো কতটা ডিক্রিজ করেছে, এখান থেকে এতটা ডিক্রিজ করেছে, huge decrease. But here the decrease is much less. So that means age-specific fertility is now concentrated in the 20 to 30s group. Okay, so I'll take a break at this point. I'll just come back in 5 minutes. Yes. So we can see two things from this. Well, one would expect that 20 to 30, that is the period of childbearing. Okay. Sorry. One expects that childbearing will be maximum in the 20 to 30 age period, and this is what is seen, particularly in 1971. Afterwards, after the age of 30, the probability of having a child will decrease. Over time, we see that the age fertility curves have shifted down. That means for every age, a woman is less likely to have a children. The number of children is declining for every age group. This is also good and expected. But if you look at the decreases, the decrease is occurring mainly in the higher age groups. Here, the decrease is much less, 20 to 25, 30. It has fallen, particularly over here. But the decrease is not that much. So that means there's a concentration of childbearing in the 20s age group. Okay. So fertility is now much more concentrated in the prime ages. This is the prime reproductive period. The next thing is that fertility has declined in all sections of the society, contrary to belief. Fertility is lower. However, we see that there are still differences. It is lower in urban areas compared to rural. Fertility is lower among the educated class than the less educated. Again, this is expected. Among the rich and middle classes than the poor. All the three is what we expect it to be. Caste differentials still persist, but they are not very wide. Religion-wise, Sikhs, Christians have lower fertility than Hindus. Muslims have higher fertility than Hindus. This is if we look at the gross figure. So if we simply look at fertility, we calculate the average fertility among different religious groups, we will get high differences between Sikhs, Christians, Hindus, and Muslims. However, we should realize that it is better that these figures are not very, they can be misleading. If you run a regression, if you control for other factors, you will see that differentials by education persists, religious differences also persist, but rural, urban, income, wealth, caste differences, they become marginal. And even where differences exist by education and by religion, the gaps seem to be narrowing. Next, we come to the age structure. So this is a stacked bar diagram. The green indicates the aged population. Red is the working age. Blue is the young dependents. So ideally, which group should be larger?
The working
The
population.
working age.
So what is happening over here? Is the working age increasing? First, let us start with the green. What is happening to the green? Look at these two figures. Has it changed?
No, sir, not significantly.
Yeah. But once we come from the 1990s, particularly the last two bars,
It has increased to some extent.
so India's population is aging. The proportion of 60 plus people is going up. And the pace is picking up over the last 2 decades. Number of children, what is happening to this? The blue line.
It's decreasing.
Why? What does it signify?
Sir, isn't it like in line with the finding that the population is aging? If there are fewer people of
No.
reproductive age,
No, it's not that much. What is happening to fertility?
So fertility is declining. So people are having less children.
Exactly. So if you have less children, that means this age group, okay, this age group is going to have a lesser number of children. That is why you're having a decrease in the 0 to 14 young age dependence. It simply reflects the overall decline in fertility. Okay. The middle age too has gone up, so which indicates that there's some sort of a demographic dividends. Okay. Overall, you can see it's not very much visible from the diagram. The dependency ratio, that is old age plus young, that has fallen. But it has fallen because the young dependency ratio has fallen. Old dependency ratio is going to become a major concern, and it is going to throw up societal and institutional challenges. So this is the age pyramid for 4 years, 1950, 2010, and then 2 projections. So we can see it's a very thin pyramid. Okay. It's a very thin pyramid, and it is really pyramidical, right? By 2010, the population has gone up, and therefore you are having a larger base. Okay. Fertility is still high, so below 20 population is high. Life expectancy is low, so people over here, people are just dying off. Okay, but we have a sizable, if you look at the number of working age population, it is going up. But it's not just working age, it's also the reproductive age. So that is why the young age children is high. What has happened over here? I mean, if the projections are correct. Where is the bulge? You're having the bulge over here. আর এখানে কি হচ্ছে? This is going down. Is it consistent with our earlier discussions?
Yes, sir, because the fertility is expected to decline further. So people are having less number of children, and the working population is the same. But given that reproductive age group, people are having less children, so the children population is going down. The child
Yeah,
population is going down.
working age. This is basically this group. They have become 40 years older, right? So this was large. It has now just come over here. But now these people, when they grew up, had a lesser number of children, as you pointed out. So you're having a shrinkage at the base. আর এখানে কি হচ্ছে? Remember that it's not a completely different group. It's the same pyramid, but the people are moving up and new people are joining over here. And these people are kicking the bucket, popping off. So now what do you have? Fertility is falling even further, so it's shrinking even more. Right? These people have moved up over here, so not very high. And this bulge has gone up. Now they are becoming the elderly, aged. So it implies aging. So
Sir?
projections, yes.
Sir, so we have two broad conclusions. One is the fertility falling and hence fewer children over the years, sorry.
Yeah.
And finally, we have the population aging and the number of aged individuals increasing steadily, according to the predictions.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so you can see that aging is going to become a problem in the future. And see, number of children falling, that is not bad. But remember one thing, that it is these children who, when they grow up, are going to look after the fathers. So if you don't have children, who will look after you when you grow up or become old? Okay, so the decreasing fertility is fine. But if it is also accompanied by aging, you're going to have a social problem. Now let's look at the demographic dividend. You have talked about it. And people have, you may have read about it in the newspapers. Okay, so no demographic dividend. Here you can see that a demographic dividend is emerging. This part. Here it's very thin. Number of workers is very thin. Now number of workers is growing. Okay. Here you can see there's a discernible bulge in the working age group. So the demographic dividend will manifest itself by 2031. But these people are also going to grow old. So what you're having is the phasing out of demographic dividend. These people are growing older and they are now starting to leave the workforce. So that means after about 2051, let's say 2061, 71, is going to be a very old society. And unless we have the necessary welfare structures, welfare institutions, old age homes, etc. If you look at it, who are the people who are going to look after these elderly people? So, every person will have to look after more than one elderly persons. Now, coming to another very dark area for India is the sex ratio. And you can see that the sex ratio has fallen consistently since 1901 till 91. After that, it has been going up in the last 3 census. You know what the sex ratio is, by the way. It is the number of females per 1,000 males. Okay, in some countries it is calculated in the other way. Number of males per 1000 females. So when you're defining sex ratio, you should always give the definition. So you can see there's a decrease and now it's going to go up. Sikkim, Haryana, Sikkim, Jammu Kashmir, Chandigarh, they have very low sex ratios. Sikkim, Jammu, Chandigarh, not very much. In fact, Jammu Kashmir is not a problem. Jammu Kashmir may be because of other reasons. Haryana, low sex ratio is desirable. It's good because Haryana was a problem area. But apart from the sex ratio, what we call the adult sex ratio, what is important is the child sex ratio. That is the sex ratio in the 0 to 6 age group. And here we find that it's much higher. I mean, instead of going up, child sex ratio is still going down. Okay. So, I mean, you can just check it up where you can find out what is happening to the child sex ratio and see what is happening. You know what the decrease in child sex ratio means? It means that you're having sex selective abortion if after the birth of the child, the girl child is not looked after carefully, they are not fed properly, if they fall ill, chances of seeking treatment is lower, health expenditure also is lower for young girls. Now, in the 1980s, there was a very classic study published in Population and Development Review by Monica Dasgupta, in which she did a qualitative survey in a district called Khanna in Punjab. And she found that in Khanna, sex selective abortion, well, it was not very high because remember, it's 40 years ago, so we didn't have the technology to detect for postnatal gender identification. It was not possible to find out whether the child was a girl or boy. But what she found out was that in the first few years after birth, the girl child faced a lot of discrimination. But she also found that if you looked at what was the status during after 20 years, 2025, she found that girls had much higher levels of education. So what you had was after birth, there was no sex selection pre-birth at that time. After birth, the girl faced a lot of discrimination and most of them died. Those who were robust, survived. They were able to go ahead. They had attainments which were much better than that of boys. Now, where is the contradiction? Do you think that this is contradictory?
So contradictory to what? The pan-Indian figures.
No. What is happening in the initial years and then what happens subsequently? So what you're getting in the initial years is the girl is being discriminated against. But if you look at the age of 20, girls are ahead of boys. What would you expect? Shouldn't the discrimination continue?
Yes, sir.
Why does it stop at the age of, let's say, 6, 7, 8? See, what we have is, it's called the problem of self-selection. Suppose you have two groups of parents. One group is gender neutral. They like boys, they like girls. Okay. The other group, or they may even prefer girls. The other group has a highly discriminatory attitude. So, as soon as the girl child is born, they treat her very badly. And the girl will not survive. Okay. So, at birth, who is in the majority? The bad parents who discriminate against the girl, or the good parents who don't discriminate?
The former.
The bad parents, right? Now, what happens if the bad parents, all the children, let's take a very extreme case, all the girls die. So now, if you look at the girls only belong to the good parents. And what are the good parents going to do? They are going to educate the girls, treat them properly. So you see that the picture gets reversed. Actually, it's not reversed. What happens is you remove the bad part of the sample. Did you understand this process?
So it means that we only have good girls, and for boys we have both good boys and bad boys. So like they bring so the boys they bring down the average, right? So like, is that
Well,
what you
it's
said?
not the good boys and bad boys, rather the parent. No, rather it's the
Yeah.
parents.
Okay.
I mean, what I'm trying to say is, we can think of it in this way. So initially, let us say you have good parents, you have got 10 good parents, and bad parents, you have got 90. So there are 10 girls. The good parents had 10 girl children, and the bad parents had 90. Okay. These people will die. Or rather, I'll use a stronger word. They are killed off through neglect. Right? So who is going to survive? These people are going to survive. These girls. And because they are with the good parents who are going to treat them properly, educate them properly, they have got high educational attainments. Okay, so initially what we had is, you had a mixture. 10 girls with good parents, 90 girls with bad parents. If you remove them, you're only going to get girls with good parents. So that means the average is going to go up. Coming to urbanization, the next feature, urbanization. I think I'll finish it. This part is the mega cities. I'll come to urbanization later, so I'll skip this slide. Just mention one or two points. Urbanization has gone up, but it still accounts for a third of entire population. But in the 2011 census, for the first time, the increase in population was more in urban areas. So that means increase in urban population is greater than increase in rural population. More important, where is the growth occurring? And as you will see later on, the growth is up till 2010, the growth mainly occurred in the metro cities. Sorry, up till 2000, the growth mainly occurred in the metro cities. After that, it has been the smaller towns that has been growing very sharply. And again, this is not a very good trend because these smaller towns lack the necessary resources, financial resources, administrative resources to scale up the civic facilities. So that means the standard of living is going to go down. Slums are going to emerge. People are realizing that if you go to metro cities, you're no longer likely to get work. So now they're shifting to the smaller towns. People are also moving away from the metro cities to the smaller towns, to the outskirts, satellite towns, as transport facilities are going up. So they are staying elsewhere, commuting to metro cities for work. But this is again going to throw up challenges. The transport sector has to be improved. Slums will have to be controlled. Water, sanitation. Electricity is perhaps not a problem, but water supply, education, health, sanitation, drainage, these are going to be major problems. Coming to the population projections, we can see that, the general prediction is population is still going to rise, but after some time it is going to fall. The green line says the fall is going to be 2060. The dotted line says it's going to be around 50s, and red line 80s. So by this century, these are projections by different methods. So by and large, we expect fertility to fall and India's population will reach replacement level. But when this is going to occur, well, we are not very sure. But it's going to occur in this century. And by 23rd century, India's population growth will have reversed itself, is going to fall. Finally, I'm going to end with just a few points. These are the sources of demographic data. You have the decadal census, annual sample registration system. Decadal census is that every year, every 10 years, the Registrar General of Census in India undertakes a survey of all households. And data is collected on education, religion, fertility, and we get the migration, place of residence, and so on, language, age at marriage, and we get the decadal census. But why don't we do the census more often? Can anyone say?
Sir, can you repeat the question?
Decadal census is decadal, right? It is repeated every 10 years. ধরো এটা যদি আমরা আরেকটু shorter time interval করতাম, what would happen?
So there wouldn't be any significant change in readings, maybe?
Yeah, if you look at total fertility, age at marriage, any demographic variable, the pace of change is very low. It will not grow very fast or even decrease very fast. So if you go for a decadal census, you can capture the change. But if you do it too often, you won't be able to observe any change. Next, we come to the sample registration system. So every year, see, when a child is born or when some person dies, you are supposed to register the event, the vital event. Birth and death are called vital events, vital statistics. এদের যে ডেটাটা সেই কারণে ভাইটাল স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্স বলা হয়। So the registration system, civil registration system, keeps a record of all births and deaths. And based on that, we can calculate the child sex ratio, adult sex ratio, death rates, and so on. But what is the problem with this system? Is the data very accurate?
No, sir.
Why? Why do you think it's not accurate?
Sir, withholding of information হতে পারে।
কারা withhold করবে?
মানে আমি যেই স্যাম্পলটা থেকে আমি যে মানে করছি, মানে যাদেরকে আমি গিয়ে আমি কোয়েশ্চেন করছি তারা
না, ওইভাবে সার্ভে হয় না। মানে তোমার বাড়িতে যখন মারা যাচ্ছে তোমরা তো একটা ডেথ সার্টিফিকেট নাও।
হ্যাঁ।
So you have to inform the authority that a person has died. তারপরে তোমরা যখন জন্মাচ্ছ তোমরা হসপিটালে একটা বার্থ সার্টিফিকেট ইস্যু করে। Again you have to inform the authorities that a child has been born.
হ্যাঁ,
এই ডেটাটা নিয়ে তোমার এসআরএসটা হয়।
স্যার এই ইনফরমেশনটাই দেওয়া হয় না, মানে মানে এই রুরাল এরিয়াস, ভেরি রিমোট রুরাল এরিয়াসে মানে এই যে বার্থস আর ডেথসের মানে আমার অ্যাকিউরেট ইনফরমেশনটা থাকে না, বিকজ ওখানে মনিটরিং সিস্টেমটা অতটা মানে ডেভেলপ নয়।
আচ্ছা, বার্থ আমরা কখন রেজিস্ট্রেশন করব না? হসপিটাল হলেই তো করে দিচ্ছি, হসপিটালই করে দেয়।
হ্যাঁ স্যার, অনেক সময় আউটসাইড হসপিটাল মানে ডেলিভারি ইনসাইড হোমসও হয়, মানে রুফসে, মানে আন্ডার রুফ হয়, যেখানে হসপিটালস অ্যাভেলেবেল নেই বা অনেক ডিস্টেন্স দূরে অ্যাভেলেবেল আছে।
Okay, so you have a certain deliveries can be divided into certain groups. One is institutional delivery in a public or private health facility. ঠিক আছে, সেটা হসপিটাল হতে পারে, it can be a primary health center, but you are going to a facility and delivery. আচ্ছা, আর একটা হচ্ছে তোমার at home, home delivery যেটা বলা হয়। Home delivery doesn't mean delivery of food. This delivery again can be of two types. One is assisted. So that means during the birth, there are some qualified persons who are attending the mother. This is called assisted health delivery or assisted home delivery. ঠিক আছে, আর একটা হচ্ছে একদম বাড়িতে বসলো, কিছুই হলো না। মানে তোমরা যদি ওই গুড আর্থ পড়ে থাকো, পার্ল বাকের, মানে দ্য woman is farming, then she tells her husband that I'm coming back in a few minutes. After half an hour she comes back and the farmer asks, কি হলো, boy or girl? And she said boy. So you can have a delivery like this. It can be an untrained person coming, that is also unassisted home delivery. So in these cases, there is no recording. The birth event will not be recorded. Death তো তোমরা বলতেই পারো, there is no incentive to record death. বার্থে তো তাও একটা রেকর্ড, একটা ইনসেন্টিভ আছে। বার্থ সার্টিফিকেট থাকলে তুমি অনেক কিছু সুবিধা পাবে। You can get access to government schemes. But death certificate will not give you any benefit. বরঞ্চ তোমার রেশন কার্ড সারেন্ডার করতে হবে। So people will try to register births, but never deaths.
ডেথ সার্টিফিকেট দেখালে ইন্স্যুরেন্স পয়সাটা পাবো?
সেটা মিডল ক্লাস আরবান এরিয়াতে।
আচ্ছা, হ্যাঁ।
গরিবদের মধ্যে ইন্স্যুরেন্স কজনের আছে? রুরাল এরিয়াতে ওখানে নেই, ওখানে তোমার মারা যাওয়া ডেথ সার্টিফিকেট মানে তোমার চলে গেল, রেশন চলে গেল, জনধন যোজনা চলে গেল, উজালা চলে গেল। আচ্ছা, নেক্সট উই কাম টু দ্য ডেমোগ্রাফিক হেলথ সার্ভে। আচ্ছা, ডেমোগ্রাফিক হেলথ সার্ভে ইজ কল্ড ন্যাশনাল ফ্যামিলি হেলথ সার্ভে ইন ইন্ডিয়া। It is a national level survey which was started in 1990s. It is actually implemented in, I think, about 60 countries with a broadly similar questionnaire. So it's supposed to, it's অন্য কান্ট্রিতে তো আরো ফ্রিকুয়েন্টলি হয়। আমাদের এখানে যেটা হলো 92-তে হলো, 98-এ হলো, 2005-06 হলো। After 5 and 6, the health ministry decided to stop the demographic health survey. Tara bolo je we don't need the data, we have all the data. And then they got into problem. They couldn't understand what was happening in the health sector. So in 15-16, they started, they repeated the 4th round of the DHS, and then they made another blunder. 15-16-এ করে তারপর আবার 18-19-এ আবার সার্ভেটাকে রিপিট করলো। So in case of health, they are not as slow moving as demographic, but still, I mean, you have figures like fertility and so on. So what happened is the 4th and 5th round made a mess. In the 5th round, you had non-sampling errors coming in. And it really messed up the survey. You can tackle sampling errors. You can adjust for sampling errors. But if you have non-sampling errors, you can't do anything to adjust. So the 5th round of DHS is giving very bad results, unexpected, very silly results. You also have the district level household and facility survey. It's similar to the DHS, but it is done at the district level. The problem is it is implemented very poorly. People don't go to the survey, they just sit down and fill it up. The data is not cleaned properly. So again, you have very poor, the quality of data is very, very, very poor. You get nonsensical figures. Annual health survey was introduced when the DHS had stopped. In the states which are not performing properly, Bihar, UP, Assam, every year they undertook the annual health survey. But the data was not made available. It was controlled, and again, the experiment was a failure. And finally, you have the NSSO migration round. So every 5 years, they do a large-scale survey on consumption and employment, unemployment. But within this, the gap of 5 years, they also undertake surveys on specific themes like health expenditure, education, and so on. Migration is one of them. So it provides some data on migration, but I mean, the NSS data cannot really be analyzed to do any meaningful results. You get some broad figures, that's all, state-wise figures, and you get a trend, that's all. Okay. Achha. So now the assignment. Can you tell me? I'll give you some extra time for the assignment because Tuesday I'll have to discuss. I'll have to show you how to do certain things. Before that, Sweden and Sri Lanka, Chokodrops and underdogs have sent me the slides, but group 3 and 4 have not sent the slides. Please send the slides because we want to share it with the entire class. They will be part of the exam. Yes.
Yes, sir, we'll do that.
আচ্ছা, so that
Yes,
is
sir,
one
we
thing.
will be
I'll send the
sending.
slides. হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে, পাঠিয়ে দিও উইকেন্ডে। আচ্ছা, সেকেন্ড ইজ মানে যেটা আমি বুঝতে পারছি যে কারো কারো ওই যে এইচ পিরামিড করছো সেটাতে প্রবলেম হচ্ছে, ইটস গেটিং ডিস্টর্টেড। সো ইন সাচ কেসেস মেক আ পিডিএফ অফ জাস্ট আ গ্রাফ and send it to me, one, but send the Excel sheet also to me. Okay? দুটো জিনিসই আমাকে পাঠিয়ে দিও। আচ্ছা। And if you've already sent it, then it's fine. If you've sent one of it, do send the Excel sheetটা বোধহয় সবাই পাঠিয়ে দিয়েছো, তাই না? আচ্ছা। কিন্তু দুটো গ্রুপের একটু প্রবলেম হয়েছিল। একটা গ্রুপ মধ্যপ্রদেশ পাঠিয়ে দিয়েছে, বাট আই থিঙ্ক ইউপি উইল হ্যাভ টু রিসেন্ড দ্য ডেটা টু মি।
Yes, so we'll send it.
হ্যাঁ, আচ্ছা। অ্যাসাইনমেন্টস, গ্রুপ 5, হু ইজ গ্রুপ 5? দ্য কোঅর্ডিনেটর?
So it's Aishwarya, but I think she is not here.
Oh, she is not here.
Probably কিছু অসুবিধা হয়েছে।
আচ্ছা।
Now, marking it.
Okay, it doesn't matter because you will have to do the state-wise variation for which you need to learn Geoda. So I'll show how to do Geoda in the next class, and you will have to submit your assignment after that. Okay, so group 5, please note down the assignment or I'll send it to you later on. But you can do it only after, start on it after Tuesday. Acha, group 6. কি আছে?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
হ্যাঁ, আরাত্রিক না? আচ্ছা।
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you look at the Excel sheet that I had sent you, that ওই অ্যাসাইনমেন্ট যেখানে রয়েছে, সেখানে আমি একটা ওয়ার্ল্ড ব্যাংকের ওয়েব পেজ দিয়েছি। So you will have to, if you go to the web page, you will see that you have data on income, per capita income, and আচ্ছা না, এখানে per capita income না, sorry, this should be population growth. You have country-wise data on urbanization and population growth. As I told you, I think তোমাদের গ্রুপটাই তো এটা করেছিল, urbanization and population growth. No, sorry, it was the Macos who had done it, right? Group 4.
হ্যাঁ স্যার,
So they had got a wrong relation. ওদের অ্যানালিসিসটা ভুল ছিল, in the sense it gave very odd results. And one reason was it was cross-section data. If you go to the World Bank site, you will get time series data. So I want you to run the look at the time series relation for India. You will get the world figures. And then if you look at it carefully, you will see there's a low medium income country, high income, sorry, মানে ওদের একদম গ্রুপ করে দেওয়া আছে, লো মিডল ইনকাম, হাই মিডল ইনকাম, আর হাই ইনকাম কান্ট্রিজ। So I want you to run the regression for these 6 groups and draw the line graphs for these 6 groups. ঠিক আছে? 7th, I want you to look at the relation between life expectancy and GDP. Look at the world growth rates. Okay. See what is happening to the world and compare. Again, just do this.
স্যার ইন্ডিয়া, ওয়ার্ল্ড আর বাকিগুলো কি বললেন?
তোমরা যদি ওই ওয়ার্ল্ড ব্যাংক সাইটটা দেখো, তার আমি তোমাদের একবার দেখিয়ে দিচ্ছি। সো দিস ইজ দ্য ওয়ার্ল্ড ব্যাংক সাইট, একটু তোমাকে খুঁজে নিতে হবে। ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জে তো থাকবে না, ইকোনমি অ্যান্ড গ্রোথ। এখানে দেখো জিডিপির অনেকগুলো ফিগার থাকবে কোনো একটা জায়গাতে, এই তো জিডিপি এসেছে। সো টেক আ জিডিপি পার ক্যাপিটা, ডোন্ট টেক জিডিপি। মানে আদারওয়াইজ তো তখন তোমার সাইজ এফেক্টটা হয়ে যাবে। সো টেক আ জিডিপি পার ক্যাপিটা। ধরো তুমি এইটা নিলে, so now you can download the data. না এটা একটু বড় ডেটা তো আমার স্লো হয়ে যাচ্ছে। I'm opening it over here. জিসি তোমাদের দেখিয়েছে না এই সাইটটা?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
হ্যাঁ, তোমার কি ডেটাটা খুলে দেখিয়েছে একবারও?
ডেটাটা স্যার খুলে দেখাননি, বাট মানে এই সাইটটা
আচ্ছা।
দেখিয়েছি আর কি কি পাওয়া যায় সেটা দিই।
আচ্ছা, দেখো এখানে তুমি খুললেই না তুমি ইন্ডিকেটর রেফারেন্সটা পাবে। দিস ইজ মেটা ডেটা, ইউ ডোন্ট নিড, ইউ নিড দ্য ডেটা। তো এইখানটা না একটু খেয়াল করে নেবে, যেমন ধরো তোমার এখানে 1960 থেকে ডেটা নেই। সো ডোন্ট টেক দিস জিডিপি, টেক আ ডিফারেন্ট জিডিপি পার ক্যাপিটা। আচ্ছা, সরি, আচ্ছা এইখানে দেখো তোমাদের সব, আমি একটু বড় করে দিই। এখানে কান্ট্রিগুলো দেখো, you have both individual countries, you also have country groups. ঠিক আছে? এই দেখো লো ইনকাম। সো দিস ইজ অল লো ইনকাম কান্ট্রিজ। এটা হচ্ছে লোয়ার মিডল ইনকাম কান্ট্রিজ। এইটা নেবে। একটা ওয়ার্ল্ড থাকবে কোথাও। এই দেখো এটা হচ্ছে আপার মিডল ইনকাম কান্ট্রিজ, এইটা নিতে হবে।
স্যার ওয়ার্ল্ড আছে তো নিচে।
ওয়ার্ল্ডটা কোথায় গো?
ওই তো
ওই তো, এই
নাম্বার
তো, হ্যাঁ পেয়েছি 264। হ্যাঁ, এই তো ওয়ার্ল্ড, এটা গ্লোবাল হয়ে গেল। গ্লোবাল আপার মিডল ইনকাম। আর এই মেটা ডেটাতে তোমরা দেখবে লো ইনকাম আছে। এই তো লো ইনকাম, লোয়ার মিডল ইনকাম, আচ্ছা, আর হাই ইনকাম। হাই ইনকামটা এইচে থাকবে। এখানে দেখো ইন্ডিয়াটা পেয়ে গেছো, এইটা হাই ইনকাম 100। ঠিক আছে, তাহলে এই 6টা রোকে তুমি নিয়ে নেবে। ওকে, করে তুমি এদের জন্য ওই রিগ্রেশন গুলো রান করে দেবে। ইউ উইল হ্যাভ টু রান ইট।
Sir,
হ্যাঁ,
sir, are we running individual regressions, right? So, for instance,
yeah,
India with the world.
one for world, one for the world,
So,
one for
I didn't
India,
understand.
just India.
স্যার মানে আপনার যেই টপিকগুলো দিলেন, ইন্ডিয়া, ওয়ার্ল্ড, এলএমসি, এলআইসি, ইউআইসি, ওই সবকটার জন্য ইন্ডিভিজুয়াল রিগ্রেশন করব, তাই তো? রান
হ্যাঁ।
করব তো?
হ্যাঁ,
Okay, sir, got it.
যখন ওয়ার্ল্ড নিচ্ছ তুমি ওয়ার্ল্ড জিডিপি নেবে, ওয়ার্ল্ড লাইফ এক্সপেক্টেন্সি নেবে, এইভাবে করতে হবে।
বুঝতে পেরেছি।
Okay, sir. Sir, and for group 6, we take urbanization and its correlation to India, world, and so on.
হ্যাঁ, আরবানাইজেশন ইন ইন্ডিয়া vis-a-vis population growth in India, or rather population in India.
Sir, so let me see if I understand that. So,
Yeah.
urbanization with India, like Indian population,
Yeah.
Okay, right. So urbanization with Indian population, world population and urbanization, and so on.
Hmm.
Right.
ঠিক আছে, so group 6 and 7, you will have to present your results before the class. Again, 5 to 6 slides, please. Not more than that.
স্যার
Not
এটাতে
more
তো
than that.
মিনিমাম 6 স্লাইডস লাগবেই, কারণ 6টা ইউজ করছি।
আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে, হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে। না, যেমন তোমার রিগ্রেশন রেজাল্টস গুলো তুমি একটা টেবিল করে করে দাও। সো ইউ উইল
আচ্ছা।
নিড, হ্যাঁ, তুমি যেটা করতে পারো, ইন্ডিয়ার ওয়ার্ল্ড একটা গ্রাফে দিলে, মানে একটা গ্রাফে না, সরি, একটা স্লাইডে দুটো গ্রাফ দিলে,
হুম।
আর এই চারটে তুমি আর একটা স্লাইডে দিলে, তাহলে আমরা কম্পেয়ার করতে পারবো।
স্যার
আর
তাহলে দুটো দুটো আলাদা, দুটো স্লাইডে রিগ্রেশনের রেজাল্টসটা স্যার কি
একটা
দিতে হবে
স্লাইডে
নাকি?
রিগ্রেশনের রেজাল্টস একটা স্লাইডে দিয়ে দাও।
আচ্ছা।
ওগুলো একটা স্লাইডে দিয়ে দিতে পারবে। আর গ্রাফগুলো যখন করছো, এই দুটো একটা স্লাইড, আর এইগুলো আর একটা স্লাইড। সিমিলারলি ফর দিস পার্ট অলসো, গ্রুপ 7ও এইভাবে করবে।
So these are line graphs, right?
এক্সেলে তোমাকে you have to choose the XY scatter plot, but I will need the line graph option. এখানে একটা লাইন আছে।
So once we select the XY scatter plot, we just generate a trend line essentially.
Yeah.
স্যার
No, you get different options.
স্ক্যাটার প্লট আর বেস্ট ফিট লাইনটা আসবে, তো এটাতে তো আমি রিগ্রেশন রান করছি।
না, আমি
তো-
দেখিয়ে দিচ্ছি। তোমরা এই অপশন, আচ্ছা অ্যাকচুয়ালি এখানে ডেটাটা নেই, আমি জাস্ট একটা ডেটা নিয়ে নিচ্ছি আগে। হ্যাঁ, আচ্ছা, so you have here, you have X, you have got Y over here. আচ্ছা, এখানে ইনসার্ট করে XY টা নেবে, XY নিয়ে তুমি এই লাইনটা নিয়ে নেবে। Okay, so actually you have to take this. ইয়ারটা নিতে যেও না, you have taken XY, take the line.
Okay, sir, understood.
You're getting a silly result because it's actually two countries. সেই কারণে এটা হচ্ছে। You should get an upward rising trend. এখানে তুমি পপুলেশন নিয়ে নেবে, পেজ দ্য রেজাল্টস ফর পপুলেশন, এখানে আরবানাইজেশন। এখানে জিডিপি নিয়ে নেবে, এখানে তোমার লাইফ এক্সপেক্টেন্সি নিয়ে নেবে। ঠিক আছে? And of course, if you have any problem, just please contact me. এইসব জায়গায় একটু খেয়াল রাখো, এগুলোকে না তোমাকে ওই নাম্বারসে কনভার্ট করে নিতে হবে। ইউ হ্যাভ টু কনভার্ট দেম টু নাম্বারস, ফরম্যাট সেলস।
স্যার কলাম উইথ এক্সপ্যান্ড করলে হবে?
কলাম উইথ এক্সপ্যান্ড করলে হবে না, ওরা এই ফর্মে
Okay.
রেখে দিয়েছে। আর রিগ্রেশন করার সময় তোমাকে এই করে নিতে হবে, কনভার্ট দেম ইনটু সাম ইউনিটস। লগ নিয়ে নাও, লগ নিলে ভালো হবে। লগ উইল গিভ ইউ গুড রেজাল্টস।
Yeah, the numbers become slightly smaller.
স্মলার, হ্যাঁ, অনেক স্মল হয়ে যাবে। পপুলেশনকেও হয়তো তোমাকে ওইভাবে নিতে হবে। এটা অ্যাকচুয়ালি পার ক্যাপিটা নয় তো, সেই কারণে এত লার্জ হয়েছে।
স্যার তো আমরা রিগ্রেশনের বেসিক্যালি সামারি স্ট্যাট গুলো জেনারেট করছি আর ওই XY স্ক্যাটারটা জেনারেট করছি ফর ইচ নেশন।
আমি গ্রুপ 6 আর 7 কে যেটা করব, এমনি একটা রিগ্রেশন র করে কোন রেজাল্টস গুলো লাগবে আমি সেটা তোমাদের পাঠিয়ে দেবো।
ওকে স্যার।
স্যার
ঠিক আছে, এক মিনিট তার মানে আসি। ঠিক আছে, তাহলে সো আই এম ক্লোজিং দ্য মিটিং নাও।
স্যার
হ্যাঁ
স্যার
হ্যাঁ,
আপনি
বলো,
বলেছিলেন আগের দিন ওই রেশিওর ক্যালকুলেশনটা চেক করবেন একবার।